Welcome to my podcast. Today I'm going to talk about another team for the student who applying for School of Medicine. And one of the team were about healthcare, awareness, and care value and attribute. So the kind of the question were about a surgeon who had performed a planned operation on a child, and it has went all okay. But it has required a period of observation in the hospital, so the child obviously need to stay in the hospital for 24 hours, and the carer wanted to take the child home and not wait for that proposed 24 hours. However, both the surgeon and the carer are likely to have a numerous concern in regard to the situation. So the question were about what the surgeon main concern, what the carer main concern, what would the surgeon do with the carer in order to compromise and reach agreed solutions so that everyone is kind of happy. So there were a lot of answers basically, and some they were really good ones. Most of the students were enthusiastic and gave their own reasoning and argument for this. So some they went for basically it's a child after all, so that's one of the things. The other thing, some proposed that we don't know what sort of operation, however, we assume maybe it's an eye operation or probably a major operation, and it might involve certain complications, so for instance, like infection, bleeding, pain element. Another went for maybe certain things that might raise up later on that we are not aware, and especially if we left the child, go back home, who will look after those complications if they have raised. Some they stated about the safety concern or this one, guardian. Say, for instance, if the child is being abused by the carer, so how they can guarantee that the child won't be exposed to those kind of things, and it might be missing out. And also, some they say that the carer are not trained to look for those kind of problems that might arise. So there is a lack of clinical monitoring. And also, some raised the issue about observation of the vitals post-operatively, or maybe the child needs IV drip, so it needs monitoring and needs the element of the nurse who will nurse him, and all sorts of things. So it has been like stated, it's mostly the observation, the infection element, and some they, as I say, spoke about potential risks if, for instance, anything can happen. So it just was a different opinion about what the main surgeon who operated the child, basically the main concern also that some they stated the child is very fragile, vulnerable. His condition might worse because he's staying in a place like in the hospital or kind of things. Also, some states about the emotional, psychological issue around this and the implication if they go home early, and the guideline of the GMC which mandate looking after the child and act for the best of his interest post-operatively. So, and some they stated about it might involve a surgical operation, so the wound get infected or the stitch detach, so that's another thing, or if there is any side effect of the medication, so it needs direct observation, and maybe he needs certain medication to be given, so it needs certain routes, so it's a thing to be done by the nurse. And some they stated it's maybe something won't appear immediately, so it might take some time, so it's another thing to consider. And if there is unforeseen complication, some stated something which related to adult. However, it could be in one way or another if the child is not well enough, or maybe the child is diabetic, for instance, or there is hidden problem. So all of that should be taken in consideration. Bleeding as well. And If there is any, for instance, someone stated about organ transplantation, so they might get some rejection, and that transplant has been rejected. So it's just another problem that need to be monitored closely and being dealt with. So all sort of things, different one have their own judgment about the case and how to take it from there, or maybe they get deteriorated later on. So it's different, basically, opinion about each candidate. So the second element of the question is about if the carer has certain concern. So that can be like, for instance, if themselves they had an unpleasant situation or unpleasant experience early on before, so that's an issue. It could be if they were thinking about maybe the anesthesia will affect the child, he might be sleeplessness, restlessness, or might get they feel unease or uncomfortable in the environment of the hospital. They might feel settled in their own comfort, so in their own bed. Some people, they don't like to sleep in a strange bed, or they might feel overwhelmed by the stressful situation. And especially all the talk about the institution, how tight it is, lack of bed, lack of support, the public view, it's not a safe place. So that's an issue. Some candidate has raised it. Some they stated maybe their parent or their carer is a full-time job, so they can't stay, so they need to go home, or maybe they have other siblings that they need to look after them. And some they stated it's an anxious situation, no one likes to sleep in the hospital or stay there, so it's an emotional issue. And they need to have their, or maybe the child been staying there for quite a long time in the hospital, so they miss home and they need a close connection. So they want to reunite with their family and their siblings. So it's another issue to be explored and looked into. And also, some they stated it's because it's stressful situation in the hospital, so they might feel safe and ease when they are in their own haven. So it's another issue to be considered as well. And one of the candidates raised about the MRSA infection, so I say cross-infection could happen. So that's another thing to be in consideration. And if the child will be left alone, isolated, and this place is not right, so they felt that either to solve the issue with their carer to stay with them, or not allowed to stay alone because it could affect their mental health and might worsen. So that's another thing. Some they stated it's not a nice place to stay on your own, and you feel your own happiness in your own bed. And maybe they don't like the machine around and wire around. They like their own toys and to be cozy. So that's another point to be considered as well. And some they stated the best recovery is usually in their own comfort, which is in their home, and they don't like to stay in the hospital as well. And some they were feeling nervousness about the whole idea, and or maybe the parent they are admin, so they look for their welfare of their child, which is basically in their own home. Or maybe they were thinking that the nurse will not be able to look after because they are short of staff, and the adequacy, it's not as it was expected, especially with the NSH saga, the story about different things, or there's not enough place or enough nurses, so it's another thing. They raised it, so it's another important thing to consider. Or maybe they are not able to understand the whole seriousness of the situation, so the parent feel that they are excluded from their child, they stay in the hospital just worrying them. So there were basically a lot of good points being stated, and how to tackle those issues. Also, if the child has their own sibling, or maybe the parent or the carer is looking after another disabled sibling. So, or there is something important at home, or the trauma itself, it's causing too much pressure on them. So all of that has been raised, and there are good points to be stated. So the last part of the question were about how the surgeon could take into consideration all of that and make things easier for both parties by compromising things, and everyone is okay. So the main thing is about that the doctor or the surgeon should speak to the carer and understand their point of view, basically, and see why they don't want to keep the child. Maybe they have a certain concept or perspective about the whole situation, so that can be ruled out in order to come to an understanding and communicate the stuff and explore it more broadly, and also assess the mental capacity of the carer, see if they understand the information, they understand what's going on, or retain the information, and then they can communicate the information back to you. So that's another thing to be considered as well, and see if you have provided them with the whole information, basically to be informed enough in order to decide if that's the best for the best interest of the child, and being deemed able to decide. So it's another point to be considered. And also emphasize the element of the empathy and being respectful in order to mitigate risk if there is anything around the area. So it's also all are evolving around the four elements of ethic, just in a way how to be answered. So once communication has been open and, explaining pros and cons, outlining the benefit of the 24-hour stay, and exploring why the carer, they don't want that, is there any particular reason, see it from their own shoe, and put yourself in their own shoe. So in order to understand why they don't want to let the child stay, what can be done to make them feel more ease, more comfortable. Probably they have a bad experience. Probably they heard some horrible story about what's going on in the NSH, or if there is any things which is going wrong. So maybe you can rule out that, explain it more, and clarify the issue. And maybe you can tell them we can let him stay for a little while, then you can take him home, or maybe get back to us if there is anything went wrong, or give them some contact details they can contact them, or maybe e-consult whereby they can reach out if there is any need for any further help. So it's just need to explore and provide the support in all levels in order for the parent to feel ease and then don't feel left alone. So by that you rule out their own concern and ease it in a process that they will feel that they were formed properly and their worries has been listened to. So by that, I hope that I covered the main things around this case, this station team around core value and attribute and healthcare awareness. Thank you.